First story. OP compelled his pregnant wife to sever ties with her narcissistic father due to his racist remarks about their 6-year-old son. Despite this, she maintained clandestine contact with him, prompting OP to resort to divorce. Ultimately, the crux of the issue lies with my wife's father. My 6-year-old son, whom I've been raising as the primary guardian since he was 3 while his mother pursued education, is central to this story. I encountered my wife through work, where her father held a higher position than both of us. Although my wife knew about my son, I decided not to introduce them until our relationship became serious to avoid unfairness. When they eventually met, they bonded well. One evening, I hosted dinner for my wife and her father, during which he met my son for the first time. His behavior towards my son was peculiar, marked by odd comments about his appearance, considering his mother is black. Confronting him afterward, he offered feeble excuses. Consequently, I requested he refrain from non-work-related contact and asked my wife for some space. Several weeks later, my wife disclosed that she had severed all ties with her father due to his beliefs, which strengthened our relationship. When we decided to get engaged, she expressed her desire to exclude her father from the wedding. We ended up both transferring to other companies. As far as I knew, he was gone from both of our lives for good. My wife is pregnant and due in a month. She has already started maternity leave and has been looking for a new job to start after maternity leave because she doesn't want to stay at her current company. Yesterday, she sat me down and told me her dad got her an interview for a job at our old company. She also told me she has been talking to him for a couple of months and wants to know how I would feel about him knowing about our future child. I told her the truth. I told her I felt betrayed, and I felt like she betrayed my son, whom she claimed to think of as her son as well. I told her that she would even ask me, which makes her less of a person in my eyes. She started crying and asked me what kind of insensitive jerk would call the woman pregnant with his kid less of a person. I told her that was how I felt, and although the language was harsh, I felt it matched what she was asking for. After cooling off, I'm now unsure if my word choice was warranted and wondering if I was in a *** hole for speaking to her that way while she is pregnant and more emotionally vulnerable. I could have just said I wasn't okay with what she was proposing without insulting her character. Relevant comments. I never put it, edit cutting off her father as a condition of our relationship, which may have been my mistake. My intention when I realized he had those beliefs was just to break up with her. However, when she came to me and told me that she had decided to cut her father off, I really admired her strength of character to do that. So we continued the relationship. When she said she wouldn't want her father at our wedding, I assumed he was a non-issue. I wouldn't need to worry about. Maybe I was naive. Give her an ultimatum. I'd leave her. But I'd never give her an ultimatum. I think that's wrong. If a relationship needs ultimatums, it's already over. If she really wanted to have a relationship with him and it truly was important enough to her, I would tell her I want an amicable separation. I hope we can work out a fair custody arrangement, and I would leave. I think an ultimatum is like telling her if you talk to your dad, I'll leave you. I'm telling her I feel betrayed by her decision to talk to him. But ultimately, it is her decision. And if she wants this, I can't stop her, as she's her own person. I'll just have to do what's best for my children and separate my oldest from her while trying to be there for the baby as much as I can. Does her wife have other family members? She had her sister, aunt, and cousin, but she is no longer speaking to them after a situation where her cousin went to prison. She said he needed to accept the consequences of his actions, and her sister and aunt cut her off. She has a lot of friends. Yes, both mutual friends and friends that are just hers. Basically, when he met my son, he said, I wasn't expecting that, and asked, is his mom in prison? Which is so ironic. He asked me if his hair had ever been washed and if I was worried about him going to school, on top of a bunch of other ignorant HT. After the dinner when I confronted him, he said it wasn't his fault because no one had prepared him and I didn't seem like the type to mix with that sort of company. Was Phil remorseful? No, she didn't say anything about him being sorry. It's only the baby she suggested he have a relationship with. If she'd suggested him having a relationship with my son, I would have left then and there.
Op is voted en TA.
Update. 2 days later, a couples counseling didn't help. An honest discussion did. My wife and I went to couples counseling. When we called to book, there was one counselor who had a last-minute opening. and the rest had long waits. There was a reason for this. If you ever need to book a therapist, don't book the one with immediate availability. Anyway, so we went. This morning, first and foremost, the therapist would not listen to us as we tried to explain why we were there. So much time was wasted because she kept insisting on talking about and asking about topics that weren't what we needed to talk about. My wife and I both repeatedly tried to explain the issue, and the therapist kept saying the surface issue is rarely the problem. It's the issue underneath that. It took half an hour for us to get her to actually address what occurred. When she finally listened to us explain what happened, she said flat out that I was wrong, my wife was right, and I needed to apologize for what I said and accept that her dad would always be important to her and had a right to be in his grandchild's life. I'm pretty sure therapists are supposed to be a bit more neutral. Anyway, she could tell I was irritated and asked what I was feeling. I said I felt deceived. I felt like my wife pretended to be someone, and now I'm meeting the real her. My wife started to cry, and the therapist said my answer was unproductive. I asked my wife, "What about you? How do you feel?" She said she felt lost. She said she's lost her family one by one because they did things she couldn't accept. Realizing the child she was carrying would never know her biological family upset her, and it made her wonder if her standards were too high. The therapist jumped in and said it's important to meet people where they are out, and cutting people out isn't the answer. The therapist ended things by saying we had a lot of work to do but could fix things. When we left, my wife said she was very opinionated for a therapist. I agreed. She asked if we could go get brunch and just talk, and I agreed to that. We talked. I apologized for the way I spoke to her. She apologized for keeping secrets from me. I told her I would never be okay with her dad being part of our kids' lives. She said she understood. I also said I thought it was a bad idea to go back to the old company, but ultimately that's her choice. She said she was going to tell her dad that meeting the baby isn't on the table and then see his reaction and go from there. I thanked her for telling me. She asked me if I was thinking about leaving her. I was honest and said I had thought about it, but that wasn't what I wanted. We both got very emotional. She asked if I loved her, and I said yes. I asked if she loved my son, and she said yes. I asked if she thinks she'll love the baby more, and she said no. She hesitated, but I'm trying not to read into that. I feel we made some progress, and we will continue to work on our relationship without the terrible therapist and try to be our best for each other and the children. Update 2. I am falling out of love with my pregnant wife. My wife is due to give birth to our son in 3 weeks, and this information used to make me happier than I could express. Now I feel a sense of impending doom. I'm scared she's not the person I thought she was. I always thought we were very aligned in our values and goals, but now I'm not sure. My son is 6 years old. I was in my freshman year of college when he was conceived. His mom dropped out of school to take care of him. We both worked part-time jobs, but she and her family did the majority of the work in those early years. We were never in a committed relationship, but we will always be connected through our son. When I graduated and got a steady job, I told her I would step up and become our son's primary caretaker while she returned to school, as I knew it was her desire to do so. For the last 3 years, I have had my son the majority of the time. He spends a lot of weekends with his mom, but he is mostly with me. When I started dating my wife, I told her I had a son, and he was my first priority. She said she liked that about me. When we became more serious and she met my son, they got along well. When a member of her family said gross racist things about my son, she said she wanted to cut that family member out of her life. My wife told me she loved me and my son and wanted us all to be a family. She has always been good with him, playing with him, talking to him about his day, and helping him with his homework. I felt like my child was safe around her. Now, whenever they are together, I am nervous. I doubt everything she told me that I once believed with absolute certainty. Part of me thinks I am crazy for not trusting her, but another part says if I have any doubt at all, I have to prioritize my kid. The problem is that soon I will have 2 kids. I feel so lost and confused. Sometimes I wish I had never met my wife. Relevant comment. I didn't leave my first son's mom. We never dated. We hooked up at a party in college when we were both 18. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm still working out how I feel. Update. My wife and I just had a son. He's a little over a week old. We also have a son who isn't her biological child, who was 6 about a month ago. I found out my wife resumed contact with her racist father, which was horrible to find out because my son is black. We talked about the issue a lot, and she agreed to never have our kids around her father, but she continued to speak with him. My wife has been resting since giving birth. I took 2 weeks off work so I could take care of the kids and go home entirely while she rested. Yesterday, she came out of our room from a nap while I was cleaning the kitchen, and my son was on the couch holding the baby. She took a picture, which I get because it's cute, and then took the baby to feed and sat with my son and talked to him for a bit. I felt like things were going really well, but when my son went to his room to play for a bit, she came up to me to show me the picture. I thought it was very cute, but then she said she wanted to send it to her father. I was upset and told her I wasn't okay with that. I asked her why she would even want to do that, knowing her father has such contempt for my son. She got upset, gave me the baby, and went back to our room. I am supposed to go back to work on Friday, but I already emailed my boss asking if I can come in next Monday instead. I need to talk to my wife about how to resolve the situation with her dad, but I don't want to upset her after just giving birth. Should I take more time off? Should I talk to her on Sunday? Should I talk to her before that? We need to have a difficult conversation, but the timing is important, and I don't want to mess it up. Update. There's more context in my earlier posts, but essentially, my wife cut off her racist father while we were dating, in large part because of comments he made about my son, who is black. My wife started to miss her dad while she was pregnant, and now wants to find a way for him to have limited involvement in our lives. He really wants to know our newborn, and she says he is willing to follow rules to have a relationship with him. I am considering leaving her because of all of this. So yesterday, we sat down to talk about everything. My wife and I are really good friends with another couple. Because we had such a bad experience with therapy, the wife of this couple, who is one of my wife's best friends, agreed to moderate our discussion. Her husband watched our kids. I laid it all out on the table. That I would never accept her father and would do everything possible to protect my kids from her father, that I would never allow him near my older son, and that I would do everything possible to keep him away from the baby as well. My wife asked if I was planning on leaving her, and I said I was preparing myself emotionally for that possibility. My wife said that no one else in her family wants anything to do with her except for her father, and that they have all cut her off. She said she really wants our baby to know someone from her family. I asked if that was worth the cost that came with it, and she said no, but that she wished I would try to understand. I said I wasn't capable of understanding wanting someone like that in our child's life. She said her father was from a different time and grew up hearing really nasty things about black people, and it isn't his fault. I said I honestly didn't care and was sorry if that made me a bad person. I said I married you, not your dad. If I knew it was a package deal, I wouldn't have married you. Our friend intervened at that point and said we needed to focus on solutions and a plan forward. My wife said she would continue to talk to her father but not send him any pictures or information about the kids. This is a fair compromise. The thing is, though, I don't believe her anymore. I feel like she's just saying what I want to hear. Am I delusional? Is there any chance of saving my marriage? My wife wants her racist father to know about our newborn, even though my older child is half black. I don't know if I can save my relationship. Update. Yesterday, I ended my relationship with my wife, and today I feel like a shell of a person. My wife and I have a 6-week-old child together. I also have a son from before I met her. My son is not the same race as myself and my wife, and her father has an issue with that. My wife cut her father out of her life when we were dating, but she reconnected with him while pregnant. Yesterday, I came home from work to find this man in my home holding our baby. I told him to get out. He tried to argue with me. I said by tomorrow I wouldn't be living here anymore, and he can come over whenever he likes. But while I am packing mine and my son's things, he needs to get out, away from me, out of my sight. My wife freaked out. She started panicking and hyperventilating. She told me I couldn't leave. I said I absolutely can and that I am done. I'm so embarrassed because I started crying when I said that. I love my wife so much, and I don't want to leave her. I had tears and snot all over my face, and my wife's dad started making fun of me. I yelled at him to get out, and she started yelling at him to get out too. I found my son hiding in his room. She tried to come in and talk to me, but I locked the door. My wife begged me to stay, but I ignored her. I could tell my son was scared. I packed up his essentials and took him to my car. My wife followed me carrying the baby. She told me I couldn't leave, but I said I had to get my son out of that environment. She said I had to take the baby then, as proof I would come back. The baby was crying at this point, but I got him buckled into the carrier and drove off. I took my son to where his mom lives with her mother. My son's mom wasn't there, but her mom was. I said I had a family emergency, and she happily agreed to watch her grandson until his mom came home from class. I then took the baby back home. They only live an hour away, so I was only gone for 2.5 hours. When I got home, my wife was in a state where I was scared for her. I went inside and said I wasn't leaving the residence because I was worried about the baby, but our relationship is over. She lost it completely. I took the baby on a walk to the store and then came back. She calmed down somewhat from sheer exhaustion. She told me I couldn't leave her. I said I wasn't leaving physically yet, but it's over. I have never felt so empty before. I miss my wife even though she's right in the other room. I miss my son even though I have FaceTimed him twice since dropping him off. I'm so angry at my wife. I'm worried this will impact my custody agreement with my son's mother. I'm sad that the person I thought was the love of my life isn't who I thought she was. I'm scared for our baby being exposed to all of this stress and negativity. I feel like this is all my fault, like I should have seen it coming. Update. In our legal advice, is it possible to get a contested divorce without spending a large amount of money in New Jersey? I'm currently seeking to divorce my wife in the state of New Jersey. We have one child together, an infant, and I have a child that predates our relationship, whom she is the stepmother of but has no legal custody of. We are renters and own 2 cars. My car was purchased before our marriage and is in my name. Her car was purchased during our marriage, and we are both on the loan and title. I want her to have it and am willing to continue splitting the payments on it until it is paid off. We have a joint savings plan. Ideally, this would be split between us, but it's not a huge amount of money, and if she gets all of it, oh well. We each have separate retirements tied to our Social Security. I don't want any of hers or for her to touch mine. She is not consenting to the divorce. She is adamant that we will remain married. Our relationship is over, but she doesn't accept this. Every lawyer I've consulted has quoted an insane figure. They said the only way for this to be affordable is if it's an uncontested divorce. Is this true, or are they just trying to profit off of me? Is there a way to divorce without her consent that won't bleed me dry? Update. And am I the RL beta for telling my wife's friend she was wrong to leave her alone? Yesterday, I had plans to take my son to a water park. I asked my friend's wife, who is good friends with my wife, to stay with her for the day. She can't really be alone right now because of her health. All of these plans were made in advance. When I got home, my wife was alone with our baby, and her friend was not there. I contacted the friend who said that my wife cussed her out and told her to get out of her home and her life. I understand that's a lot to put up with, but she didn't even call to tell me she was leaving her alone. She told me she didn't call me because my wife is a grown woman and everyone needs to stop coddling her. I said that wasn't her decision and that I felt betrayed by what she did. She called me a disaster whose life is falling apart and said that instead of passing judgment on her, I should shut up and listen for once. I didn't mean to offend her. I was just shocked by what she did, but her extreme response makes me think I did something wrong. Was I an RC for judging her actions? Second story. My boyfriend ended our 3-year relationship, believing my friend lies about me having an affair with him after I rejected his proposal. What should I do? I want to start off by saying that I realize how messed up this situation is, and I understand why my boyfriend would be upset and even suspicious, but I can't believe he doesn't trust me. So, I've been with my boyfriend Paul for 3 years. In the beginning of our relationship, Paul had some issues with trust. He had been cheated on in the past. I made it clear right away that I had never cheated on anyone, that I would not, and that I understood if he had trust issues from the past, but that it was a deal breaker to me to be with someone who couldn't trust me. He has since those early days been really good about it, and throughout our 3 years together, I think I've earned his trust. I have always been honest with him and never cheated on him. He's asked to see conversations of mine that I've had with male friends twice over those 3 years, and I've obliged. The second time, however, I made it clear to him that I was very unhappy to be treated as though I was acting suspiciously and did not deserve privacy with my friends when he had no reason at all to think I was being shady. I said that if he didn't trust me because of something I had said or done, I was 100% happy to have a conversation about that, to discuss it, and to address any issues he had. But if I had done literally nothing to cause suspicion, then I expected him to trust me. He agreed with me, said that I had done nothing, and never asked again. One of those conversations he asked about was with my friend Roger. Roger had 2 years before I started dating. Paul confessed feelings of love for me. I told him I wasn't interested, and that was that. By the time I was seeing Paul, I had absolutely no reason to think things were anything but platonic between Roger and myself. A week ago, Roger and I got together for coffee. Again, I want to stress that before this happened, I had literally no reason at all to think he had held on to those feelings. At the cafe, Roger suddenly went on this impassioned monologue about how much he still loved me, how Paul was a terrible boyfriend, and I should dump him and be with Roger, how loyal Roger was, how perfect we were together, etc. I was pretty much silent through this whole speech because I was so surprised and uncomfortable, but when he stopped, I told him, probably not as strongly as I should have, but I didn't know what to do, that I loved Paul, that I was absolutely not leaving Paul, and that I needed to go home immediately. I was shaken up by the whole thing, so I took my time getting home to calm down, but by the time I got home, I found that Roger had sent a long, utterly insane FB message to Paul detailing how much he loved me, that we were destined to be together, and heavily implying, but not outright stating, that Roger and I had been carrying on an affair for weeks. I don't know why he did this. I have no explanation. Paul believes it completely. He has listened to my explanation of things, but thinks I am lying. He doesn't want to see me or talk to me at all anymore. I'm completely devastated that Paul would believe this Facebook message over me. I'm horrified that my relationship with him has ended like this. I'm embarrassed that now I'm being seen as a cheater and a slut who slept around on Paul. I'm utterly hateful toward Roger. It's been a week, and I can't convince Paul to talk to me. I know he had those trust issues in the past, but I really believed we were long past them. What do I do? A friend said he loved me, freaked out when I rejected him, and told my current boyfriend we were having an affair. The boyfriend won't believe it is a lie. Additional information from the OP. When told you can't be friends with someone after they tell you, I love you, I definitely hear what you're saying, but I just want to point out that I never believed feelings would magically evaporate. Roger said he loved me 5 years ago. We were distant from each other for about a year after he told me he loved me. Then we reconnected through mutual friends, and we were friends for a year before I dated Paul. During that year, he acted totally platonically around me, and I guess I thought he had had enough time to get over his feelings. He's been totally platonic as well for the 3 years I've been with Paul. Obviously, I was wrong, and you were right about how I should have cut him out, but I didn't think the feelings would just disappear. I thought the year we weren't really in contact had made them go away. However, Paul has already heard the whole and complete story, including what Roger said 5 years ago. He thinks I'm lying. However, when I say there is nothing between Roger and me now, should I still push the issue with Paul and try to make him talk to me? He's heard everything already. He just refuses to believe me. Update. I want to thank everyone so much for commenting. Before I post what happened, I just want to address a few things that I didn't get to in the first post. First, Paul knew I was having coffee with Roger. It wasn't some kind of secret thing. Paul has female friends. He has lunch or coffee with alone too. So this isn't unusual in our relationship. Second, Paul did not know that Roger had said he loved me 5 years ago. I definitely made a mistake not telling him that, but honestly, it was so long ago and, to my obviously wrong knowledge, it was old history. We did not extensively discuss our pasts, so there wasn't really a natural point where it would have come up, and it just never occurred to me to say anything. Finally, Roger and I did not have a particularly intense friendship. It's not like we were texting constantly or best buddies. We hung out occasionally and would be in touch if something relevant came up, but we didn't just chat randomly. Anyway, with that having been said, I took the advice of some Redditors, and when I was a little calmer, I FB messaged Roger asking him why he lied. He responded with, "What do you mean?" At which point I started pressing him harder. He responded only with one-word answers, and honestly didn't reply to most of my messages at all, no matter how much I asked, and never actually said any definitive statement of yes, I lied for such and such reason. Finally, I sent him a definitive statement that said I had never had an affair with him, that I was incredibly hurt and angry, that our friendship was over, and that he was never to contact me again. He replied, "Okay." And that was that. I sent the entire Facebook conversation to Paul, not thinking it would help save us, but just to try and clear my name. In the message, I asked him if Roger's reactions to my questions and my response to Roger were in line with what he would expect if Roger's accusations were true. Paul didn't respond that day, but the next day he called me. Paul basically said that the more he thought about it, the more he believed me, and that the conversation between Roger and I helped him believe that Roger's responses didn't make sense, and he now thought nothing had gone on. However, he said that despite the fact that the trust was broken between us, he couldn't be with me. I got pretty mad and yelled at him, asking why I was being punished for nothing, and he just basically disengaged from the discussion. Not my finest moment, I know. I was just so overwhelmed with frustration. We did eventually end the conversation calmly, if not amiably, and he is dropping off the stuff that I had left at his apartment later this week. I learned my lesson. Not only will any declaration of interest by a friend end that friendship forever, but I will never date someone who has trust issues or a history of being cheated on again. I'm sure I come across as a little bitter about this, but honestly, I feel like there was absolutely no point to my fidelity and honesty during those 3 years. I got treated like a cheater whether or not I cheated, and both Paul and I ended up hurt and alone despite being 100% faithful. It is better to end up alone or stick to FWB than end up investing another 3 years in a relationship to have this be the conclusion. TLDR, Paul and I are done. Roger and I are done. Relevant comments. Coffee. I can't understand Roger. How does he live with himself? I could never do that to someone. OP. I suspect based on what I know of Roger that he got angry when I rejected him and impulsively sent the message to Paul. He's not usually a psycho, so I'm betting that after a bit, he realized how terrible what he had done was, and that is why he avoided me or refused to talk to me when I FB messaged him. Why he wouldn't apologize or try to make it right, I have no idea. Hassan 30. Not only will any declaration of interest by a friend end that friendship forever, this is just a side note. The main thing is you're rid of both these sources of drama, good for you. But I'm a guy who has declared interest in people and then gone on to be good friends after being rejected, as in really just friends. So I choose carefully because perhaps you'll write some decent people off if you have a blanket rule. I totally get why you feel that way, though. OP. I thought that this would be possible, but honestly, I got a ton of comments, and still I'm getting them, saying how ridiculous I was to ever imagine I could continue to have someone in my life who once confessed feelings for me. A lot of people have pointed out that allowing Roger to be a friend or a part of my life at all was a huge mistake, and frankly, looking at the result, I have to agree. It would be unfortunate, but I might have to dismiss some good individuals. This experience has reinforced my decision not to have individuals in my life who may harbor or have harbored feelings for me without reciprocation. Your attention to the video is appreciated. If you enjoy such narratives, we have additional content available. To access it, please subscribe to our channel, give it a thumbs up, and share it with your friends.